Yes, I'm just going to say that we will be recording this webinar session so that we can share it with you afterwards, and also for those who couldn't make it to see this live session, they will have the recording to watch afterwards, just so you know. And this webinar series is about going digital. So 2 weeks ago, we were talking about the digitization project, about a Egyptian mummy, actually, from Boonshoff Museum Discovery. And today, the theme is still digital heritage, but we will be talking about the history of a castle, actually. And that's why we have Christel here to tell that story. So I think I'm just going to start by sharing my screen again. So we have a very brief agenda for today. First, I'm just going to give everyone a brief introduction about Interspectral, what we do, who we are. Then we go along for the main event today to listen into the story about Linköping Castle. And then we'll have a short Q&A session. And I want to say that feel free to ask questions during the whole webinar, but we will address to them when we get to that point. But feel free, just when a question pops up, just ask it. We have that Q&A function in the webinar that you can use whenever you feel like. And we have a few questions that we thought of that this webinar will answer, so you can look out for those answers as we go along. But we're going to start with Interspectral. And yes, we're a company from Sweden, a pretty small one, and we've been doing 3D visualization for 5 years now. And basically what we do is that we transform complex 3D data into engaging experience and insights. And I think, as you can see at the picture here, it explains it pretty well. So here, for example, we started out with a museum that had a mummy, a physical object that was kind of untouchable, unreachable. We managed to have children and people of all ages and visitors to interact with this object in 3D, in a digital environment, allowing them to get a lot closer to the object and get to know its story. And yeah, so we could really create a narrative around that. So that's what our technology can do. And I usually say that we bridge research with public engagement, meaning that for example, medical CT scanning and laser scanning and photogrammetry allows for cutting edge research questions, and it allows for analyzing sort of non-destructive investigation of objects. And then we can bridge this with this technology. You can present it and allow for engagement from the public as well. We can make it understandable for people of all ages. And how we can do this, that's actually a software that we develop ourselves. And that's the main star of the show, and it's Insight Explorer. With Insight Explorer, we can fuse and process 3D data, and we can really make the magic happen and create those visualizations that people can relate to and engage with in interactive exhibitions and in exhibition halls and things like that. So yeah, but enough about us. Another great example of what we can do and project that we had is Linköping Castle, where we made models and digital copies of a castle and a very special artifact from the collection of this museum, Linköping Castle and Cathedral Museum, that you will get familiar with just in a bit. And the thing is that earlier this week, in preparation for this webinar, I went to visit Christel, the museum director at this museum, and she gave me an amazing tour around the whole museum. And as for many others, it's a closed venue now due to the pandemic, so we had the whole place for ourselves, and it was an amazing experience. This castle is sort of a hidden gem and it stands in the shadow of this great cathedral that Linköping is very famous for. So it was a great experience to learn more about this unknown place. So what we do is that I brought my phone and I recorded the tour that I got from Christel, and we would like to show that to you so you see the guiding that I got. But right before that, I thought that Christel could introduce herself a bit.
Well, my name is Christel Storm, and I'm the director of the Museum of Linköping Castle and Cathedral Museum. And we are showing objects, beautiful objects from the church, from the cathedral inside, and also telling the history of the castle. And the museum is situated in the north wing of the castle. And actually this year we are celebrating our 20th birthday. So it was founded at year 2000, and we wanted to celebrate and give ourselves and our guests a real birthday present, and that's why we did this project.
Yes, great. So I think it's time to show what we did, to show the guiding that I got, to share the story of this castle. So just stay tuned, and I will see. Let's see. Perfect. So I'm gonna go ahead and mute myself for a while and stop this video, and just everyone can sit down and enjoy the show.
What we see here is the Cathedral of Linköping. It's standing tall in the city center, reminding everyone of the Catholic history we have here in Sweden. But I'm going to explore a hidden treasure that we can find behind it, and it's the Castle of Linköping. This house has been a home for bishops, dukes, and kings ever since the first building was built in the 12th century.
So, welcome to Linköping's Castle and Cathedral Museum. We're now standing in the inner courtyard, and in the north wing there is a museum that was founded 20 years ago, and it's opened 20th of March, the year 2000. And it's a wonderful little museum telling all about this magnificent castle, the history of the castle, and it's also showing beautiful objects from the church. So it's quite unique museum. The oldest part of the Castle of Linköping is in the west wing, where we actually have a well from the Middle Ages that's still pouring out the most clear and well-tasted water. It's fantastic. But now we're standing in a defense tower that was built during the late 13th century, and it was stood in 5 floors, 1286, and it was founded by the Bishop Bengt, who was the son of Birger Jarl. And Bengt and his older brother, the king, Magnus I, Magnus Lavrås in Swedish, they founded a Franciscan monastery in the center of Linköping, and it was founded the year after, 1287. So that's when one can say that the city of Linköping actually was founded. And if you want to make the acquaintance with the first bishop who actually lived here in Linköping, you can find him here on the screen. This is the Bishop Gisle. And there was an important church meeting here, 1153, and for his guest, he built a residence like this, 2 floors high, with a little cellar where he kept the wine and the food. And you can also have some little info points where you can read more about this little residence. And the residence was then extended during the Bishop Baines period. And here you can see the defense tower, and we're now standing in the bottom of the tower. And new for this time is to build important buildings in bricks. And that was transported, and the knowledge of building with bricks was transported to Sweden, then to Scandinavia by the monks in the monasteries. So you can see that the old bishop's residence was extended in brick, and here you can find the defense tower and the wall against the church also. And this was only the entrance for the bishop. The other ones had to go the other entrance here.
So we have left the defense tower and we're walking up the stairs to the third floor. And what we're about to see, which I'm really excited about, is the Great Hall of Duke Charles, who later became the King of Sweden, Carl IX. And this is where he held his big dinner parties and invited all his guests during the early 17th century. And now we're standing here 400 years later, and I'm wondering, what was the purpose of incorporating new technology into this room today?
We wanted to tell the exciting and important story of this castle, and therefore we borrowed old paintings from the National Gallery in Sweden, and to show which king had actually lived here and extended the castle. And when Gustav Vasa came to power in Sweden, 1523, he had a big loan to Lübeck to pay back, and he didn't know where to find the money, but he had heard about Martin Luther, and therefore he suggested at the parliamentary session in Västerås, 1527, that Sweden should be Protestant instead of Catholics. And the bishop, the latest Catholic bishop who lived here was Hans Brask. And after this parliamentary session, he fled the country. And Gustav Vasa just took over all the land, all the farms that the bishop owned, and of course also the castle of Linköping. So he moved inside and started a transformation from the old bishop's residence to a royal palace, a real Renaissance palace. So here you can see the palace of Gustav Vasa. And in the late 15th century, the prior bishop, Henrik Tidemannsson, he had built up those defense walls around the castle so that you got an inner courtyard here. Continuously, his both son continued to extend the castle, and here's how the castle looked 1604 when everything was ready. So Johan III, he built it up so it was 3 floors high, but only the south wing and the west wing. And 1604 it was accomplished by Duke Charles, who later became King Carl IX. And in the south wing, there was a great parliamentary hall, a big parliamentary hall. And Johan had married a Catholic princess who became the Queen of Sweden, Katarina Hägglönica, and their son was raised to be Catholic, and he was named Sigismund. And Sigismund was king both in Poland and in Sweden. And when he was in Poland, Duke Charles was the one to lead the parliamentary session, and he gained more and more power. And so therefore, Sigismund took big fleet and a lot of his army to actually try to take away the power from his uncle. And there was a big battle here in Linköping, the Battle of Stångebro, in the center of Linköping, and Sigismund failed and lost. So Duke Charles said, "I'm the king," and Sigismund fled, and that's why we are still Protestants here in Sweden today. Duke Charles, King Carl IX, he imprisoned all the noblemen that had fought for Sigismund, and they were kept during a big parliamentary session here in Linköping at the year 1600, and they were imprisoned here inside the castle. And later on, there were 5 persons executed on the square Stora Torget in the center of Linköping, and it's all known to the history as the bloodbath of Linköping. And in the late 18th century, the county governor Fredrik Georg Strömfelt, who lived outside in the other courtyard, he wanted to move inside, and he raised a big funding and actually built a beautiful residence inside the castle that is still used by the present county governor. And he didn't want this old building to look like a fortress, like a Renaissance castle. He wanted it to look like a 18th century residence. So he took away all the gables, all the entrance from the south wing. He wanted it all plain, all the privies, all the old toilets for the bishops were taken away, the other stairs were taken away. So everything was, the windows was placed in rows to get the castle to look higher. But at the year 700, there was a big fire inside the city of Linköping, and the town hall was burnt down among 150 other estates. And in the town hall, there was the prison cells. So they moved the prisoners inside the castle. So it has not only been noblemen and kings and bishops who have lived here, it's also been thieves and other bad persons living inside. It was imprisoned here inside the castle. And when the county governor moves inside and had his beautiful residence here, he didn't want to see the imprisoned people, so therefore they built up a wall inside the inner courtyard so that they can exercise on the one side and that the county governor can use the other side. And in the late 19th century, for the time being, the fashion was that everything should look as old as possible. So all the old Vasa residences was trying to make a look older. And they didn't know exactly how the gables was put on during the Renaissance period, but they tried to make it look the same and fashionable. So they put on new gables and put on a new spear on the entrance, the stair entrance to the castle. And this is made by Roberto Lagardi. And here you can see also a gable for the entrance on the south wing. And 1930s, the castle was restored once again. And this is how it looks today. So it's all been filmed, and you can see the entrance from the south wing, and you can also see the castle today, how it looks today. And this little spot shows where we are standing right now in the museum of Linköping's Castle and Cathedral Museum. And on the back where the county governors has his dining room, and also where the Duchess, the Princess Estelle's, has her own saloon. The inhabitants of Linköping and all through Sweden don't know the long and important history of this castle. So thanks to Westman-Wernerska Foundation, who have sponsored us and make this possible, this project possible. And for me, working here, it's wonderful to use this tool to present the story of the castle. You get everyone involved, and the classes from the school and other groups that are visiting us. It's a wonderful tool to tell the story of the castle. And this is for me when I do the guiding, and also as well when you come here on your own, you can explore and you can find more and learn more about the castle on your own. So it's a wonderful tool for us.
Did you learn anything new?
Yes, we learned a lot during this digitalization of the history of the castle. And I must say, Eva Modén, who have worked as an archaeologist here and did the archaeological excavation in the late 1990s, she has done a tremendous job and explained where the windows were seated and where the castle was extended. She was marvelous in this job, actually. And she knew all the things. She knew where the stones have been seated, where the walls have been seated. And my job was to find the paintings, to get inhabitants inside the castle, to tell the story of the people who have lived here and all the things that happened here. So it's been quite a good match, actually. And then we had a good person working at Interspectral who understood us and could explain how it need to be done and what we could present here. So it's been a real good job.
Yeah, it's really impressive how that many stories can be held within the walls of just one building. But I know that's not the only thing you have to show here. So we're now entering a treasure chamber. Tell us more about that.
In this treasure chamber, there are a lot of unique items. And we also have, of course, a lot of gold and silver from the cathedral. But the most valuable things in here are medieval textiles, needleworks from the nuns in Castle. And in front of the altar inside the church, this is the cloth, the frame in front of the altar, and it's all been embroidered by the nuns in the late 15th century. So 1515, the bishop's bones were dug up from his grave and was put in beautiful boxes and worshipped inside the cathedral. And often the boxes were made of gold and silver, but it's quite unique because the nuns in Boston are made of 5 reliquaries, like a glass, like a chalice with lid, and only 4 remains to this day, and 3 are shown at the Historical Museum in Stockholm, and here in Linköping's Castle and Cathedral Museum, we're shown 1, and it's quite a unique piece, and you can see it over here. It's all started in the year 2017 when we received a gift from the Historical Museum, the National Historical Museum in Stockholm. And it was this little note, this little paper note here. And on the paper note you can read farms that was donated to the monastery of Vadstena. And it's all been ripped out from a book where they kept all the names of the farms. And the latest book with all the donated farms is from 1466. And this little note was put in between the beautiful embroidery and the wooden box. So one believed that the nuns teared out the papers and used them when they embroidered the reliquary to get some support when they put it up all the beautiful stones and the freshwater pearls and the enamels. So this is how the reliquary looks today. And as we digitized this, two professors from the University of Uppsala visited us and brought with them their microscope and found out quite new things that we haven't known before. So this is the digitized for this beautiful reliquary. And first we tell a little about relics and saints, and Sweden has two saints, and here's the most famous one, Sankta Brigida, the Holy Bridget of Sweden. And here you can explore this reliquary, and you can turn it upside down. You can see in the bottom. You can see the old market in here. Oops, Linköping it says. And it's all due to the bishop Nicolaus Hermani. And the skull of the bishops were kept inside this reliquary. And here's the entire box. But when you look at the lid, the professors thought, well, if you look at the lid, you can see actually it's a ribbon that's been red from the beginning. And it's all been covered in silver plates. You can see one is, a little piece is still left here. In the late 18th century, they extended the church and built up a new tower on the church, and they needed money, funding, so they just robbed all the medieval things and to pay for the extension of the church. But here they missed a little piece of the silver plate here, and when they looked in the microscope, they can see that it's been golden shine, and it looked like a crown. And they also found out that it's been put rubies in every of this corner, and probably one big ruby on the top to be able to lift the lid. And from that, one believed that someone's skull that's been connected to the monastery of Vadstena, that it was made actually for someone else, not the bishop here. So it's written all new history, and one believed that it's the Saint Catherine of Vadstena, the daughter of Saint Bridget of Sweden. And here you can see how thick the wooden box is actually in the middle, and how they're embroidered and just kept round. And we made quite a job trying to figure out how this magnificent piece this reliquary looked from the beginning. And as you can see, that they've taken away all the stones, all the pearls, all the nails. But look here. This is how one believed that it must have looked like from the beginning. And there are rubies, there are aquamarines, there are freshwater pearls, the emeralds. It's wonderful. And you also have pendants hanging around here, and you can see the gold and silver plates. And from a mitre, the headpiece of the bishop, there were enables, and they have exactly the same size as on this reliquary. And the mitre is from the middle of the 15th century, so we put them in there because the professors thought that this is how it looked. And here one can see the crown from the nuns in the monastery, and you can see the resemblance of the lid. So Saint Catherine, she was also beatified, and her skull was laid in this reliquary, 1489. The funding for this comes from the Professor B. Risberg's stiftelse donation fund. So this is also a wonderful tool and get people to appreciate and get interested in this unique object that we're very proud to actually be able to show here in our museum.
Wow. Thank you so much for that, Christel.
Thank you.
So I hope you all enjoyed it. I did enjoy it as much this time. So I thought that we will deal with some questions. And actually, I would like to start because since we met in the beginning of this week, I realized I have some questions about this project and you're part of it. So I think I'm actually going to start this Q&A. So I'm wondering which partners that have been involved in this project, and except Interspectral, then, of course.
Well, there is an enterprise here in Linköping called Spot Scale, who have a drone that have filmed the castle so that we can show the castle today. And as I said in the film, also Interspectral and the archaeologist Eva Modén.
Right. And you also mentioned that you were thinking sponsors and foundations that contributed with fundings for this project. And I was thinking, how can a small museum afford an installation like this?
Well, you have to raise money. You have to find a foundation, and in the application, I had a lot of help from Interspectral. So we have the foundation of Professor B. Risberg, and it's connected to Cathedral and the Linköping diocese, and then also from the town of Linköping, who have a foundation called Westman Wernerska Foundation.
Okay. And how do you come to hear of these foundations?
Looking for money, actually, trying to develop the museum. I've been working here as a director for 3 years now, and last year we was the digitalization of the reliquary, and this year then the history of the castle.
Okay, yeah. And I'm guessing a project like this takes a lot of time. And how long was this project from you got the idea until until the finished exhibition?
Well, it took over a year, and we received the money in 2008. So it's been a long way, but finally now celebrating our 20th birthday, where everything is finished. So we're very happy for that and very proud to be able to show this.
Yeah.
And also, as you said, because I was thinking, we are telling the material, we're telling the history of our cultural history with the material, the objects from the church, but we're also telling the immaterial cultural heritage with the story of the castle. So it's quite unique that we're doing both here at the museum.
Yeah, it's a very unique case, I must say, and for me it was nice to see how the technology can be used kind of like it's a complement to the ordinary, like to the original exhibition room.
Yes.
So it's not something you replace the physical objects or in your collection with, and yeah, it was a nice setup, very nice indeed. And I was thinking as well, have you had any response to this before you had to close the venue?
Yes, the digitalization of the reliquary was finished first. So there we had a lot of new visitors coming to our museum, people involved in dressing, in middle-aged dressing, how to hand sew, and how you did that, and then I get people very interested in saints and relics and interest. So it's really us, and it's also we can use the pictures in our marketing, and so it's we're becoming famous for our new projects.
I'm very happy to hear that. Yeah, it's and I can agree to that. Even you can kind of it catches your attention, the objects that you might not be
No.
be the things you drive to when you enter an exhibition hall, but this is yeah.
And it's also a good tool for me when I do the guided tour, because I could collect a whole group of people in front of me and then tell the story. But it also works for people who come and visit us on their own. They can explore things on their own and find out more things when they press all the information points, the info points. So it's working for all ages, actually.
Yeah. We're actually getting a question here
Good.
that I would like to bring up. And so we know that you like to get people to visit physically your place, but do you plan to put the project online as well in the future?
Yes, we're working on that, and hopefully I can show this film now that we're recording today, because I know there's a big interest in this, and it's we have been a long work with this, so I'm gladly to share all things, all the work with other museums and also other interests. People are interested in what we do.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah, because it's I guess we're all thinking about that, going online now since it's these times. So we're gonna find our ways to do that. But going digital it's a great start, and now we have all the possibilities to reach out in new ways, of course. And I was thinking, Claes, you are the expert here on turning artifacts into digital twins.
Well, yeah.
What do you see like the perks of this technology?
Well, there are a lot of perks. The first thing is getting something to be digitized. Then as soon as it like enter the digital realm, there are not endless possibilities, but almost. So you can put these models of the castle online. You could, I don't know, 3D print them. You can use them in ordinary 2D print. You can, I don't know, maybe in the future put them in some sort of game or something like that. So I think the important thing with digitization is that you move a physical thing from the physical world into the digital world or the digital realm, and then you can choose what you want to do with it. Somewhere along those lines.
Yes.
But it's always nice if you have, like, usually if you digitize something in the culture, heritage, or archaeological arena, you do it for, you want to answer some questions, or in a scientific context, and then you maybe put the data away, you store it in a hard drive in some sort of archive or in a database. But the idea here is that you can use the same data in the exhibition, and I find that pretty interesting. So maybe if you want to digitize something, you should start having some sort of scientific question that can be answered or understood by the visualization. And when you're done with that, you can tell that story in the exhibition space or in the
but it's also interesting, because if you find out more about this object you want to show, this story you want to tell, you can build up more, and you can put in the digitization and just build it up more and more. So it's a
and one good thing with, like, the castle, the 3D models, the reconstructions of the castle, is that 3D models tend not to get old, in that sense that I think that you can use these models in 5 years if there's a new technology, or maybe if you want to do something else with the models in 5 years, you can use the same models, and if you want, you could put other textures on them. So it's somewhat future proof.
Yes. Yeah, it is, and I feel it's yeah, you mentioned it. It's more dynamic in that sense, and active, and I think that could also be a good thing when talking to these foundations and trying to secure funding for a project like this, is that you can kind of have the argument that the collection will not sit on the shelf and collect dust, but it will be active and it will be used and people will engage with it. So if you're contributing with money, you also you will be sure to contribute to the experience of the museum and experience of the collection. It's a good thing.
Yeah, and I think it activates the physical object too. So I think that if you, as with the reliquary, if you have the digital version next to the physical version, I think there's this dynamic where you look at the real object and then you go and maybe zoom into some little detail that's hard to see on the physical because you can't touch it, and then you go back to it's this little dance between the physical object and the digitized object, and I think that is really important and good that you move between them. It's a learning dance, maybe, or something like
Yeah, absolutely. There's really a benefit of having the physical objects and the digital version close to. So I'm wondering if we might have any more questions. Now it's a good time to ask them. And if anything pops up, just feel free to email us or Christel even afterwards if you have something you would like to ask her. Otherwise, you can email info@interspectral.com about anything related to this webinar. And as I mentioned before, it's being recorded, so we will share the link with you afterwards. So you can take care, or so you could take part of this the session afterwards. Yeah. But if we don't have any more questions to address to, I think it's time to I think we're done for today, so to say. It's been a pleasure to have you here, Christel. It's really glad you can join us. And to all that listen, I hope you enjoyed it or learned something from it. So yeah, we'll be back in 2 weeks' time. We haven't decided on we haven't really officially published the topic of the next webinar, but stay tuned. And we will tell you all about it, and I hope we'll see you again. So take care, everyone, and have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.